I don't believe Albert is the Boston Strangler. I do believe, though, and I'm pretty certain, that he did kill and rape Sophie Clark and Joan Groff, because witnesses said that they saw a man in green pants around the time of the murder and rape, and also that one of the witnesses, the neighbor of Sophie Clark, Marcella Luca, said that a man came to her door and said, the superintendent sent me to paint your apartment, and I also might have to work on your bathroom ceiling, which is stuff that Albert would say as the Green Man during that time period. And also, he even said, the man said that, hey, have you ever thought of modeling? Which is exactly what the Measuring Man thing was, you know. He would talk to women, say like, hey, have you ever thought of modeling? Let me take your measurements. Oh, you look so good. Let me have sex with you, and I'll make sure that you become famous. You know, he did that. And that's why I think he did Sophie Clark and Joan Groff, you know. But like I said before, I don't believe that he did the other murders and rapes. There's just too much evidence proving that he didn't do it. At least I believe that there's too much. I mean, first off, he was obsessed with money and he wanted to be famous no matter what. He wanted to be someone who's important and everyone would remember and know. And I mean, back then, the Boston Strangler was such a big thing. Everybody knew him and was scared. Everybody knew about it and was scared. You know, they're like, people were buying dogs and batteries and guns and everything. They were buying Tupperware, all because of this Boston Strangler. They were scared that they would be the next person to get raped and murdered and fondled with, I guess. You know? But the other thing is the reward money. There was a $10,000 reward money for the Boston Strangler. And I mean, Albert was always trying to support his family, and he was obsessed with money because he wanted to support his family. So with $10,000, that's a lot of support for a family. Back then, that's a lot of money. I mean, even now, that's a lot of money. But so after he confessed, he told his brother, I'm gonna make so much money off this thing that I'm gonna own the mental hospital that they send me to. You know, that's how confident he was about this money plan. And I don't understand how Albert went from being the Measuring Man to measuring women and having sex with them and fondling them to the Green Man who just raped and fondled women, you know, would tie them up and all that, to being the Boston Strangler and murdering people and raping them. You know, all at the same time, because it all happened together. Like, after this happened, and then after that, you know, it went from Measuring Man, Green Man, Boston Strangler. You know, it doesn't make sense to happen all at once, because normally a serial killer, he's not gonna be like, I'm gonna kill you. Okay, you know what? I'm bored of killing. I'm gonna rape people. I'm gonna fondle them now. I always thought that if they kill, they stick to killing, because that's what they know how to do. You know, they don't jump around. And also, patterns are different from the murders. I mean, there was that one where they stabbed the woman 20 times and did like a bullseye on her breast. That's totally random. That has to be someone else. You know? Like I said before, I think he did Sophie Clark and Joan Groff. But I don't think he did any of the other ones. They're too different. You know? But also the evidence that he said, like, I did this, I put her there, I stuck a broom up her butt, it's all talk. And it's known that his attorneys would tell him stuff to keep the story straight. They fed him information. Here's an example. I saw this. Albert said, I stabbed Sophie Clark. And then the attorney was like, they would tip him off if he was wrong. They were like, you said you stabbed her, right? But she was strangled. Are you positive you stabbed her? And I mean, a moron could figure that out. Like, oh, oops, I meant to say I strangled her. I did not kill her by stabbing her. I strangled her to death. You know, I don't know how stabbing popped into my mind. It's weird. Oh God. But also newspapers were full of information about the time, because medical examiners would have press conferences and tell everything. They talked about the first victim with the blood coming out of her ears. The broom, obviously, that had the lacerations in the vagina, and how the body was found 10 days after. You know, that was all in the newspaper, you know. And also, it was fact that Nasser would talk to Albert about the stranglings. Like, he made sure that he knew about the stranglings. Someone said that they overheard up to 20 conversations where Nasser would tell Albert about the stranglings, you know. So yeah, it was fed. And also, during the trial, two very important witnesses came. Marcella Luca, who was the Sophie Clark's neighbor, and Gertrude Groom, who was the only survivor of the Boston Strangler. They went to the prison that he was in during the time to see if identify him as the attacker. They both denied that Albert was the attacker. But they also went, without knowing, they also went to go see George Nasser. And they were convinced. And they were like, he is the attacker. Gertrude said, when she saw Albert, she's like, no, that's not the person that went up to talk to me, who tried to attack me, who I attacked back. No, that is not him. When she saw Nasser, she got this feeling in her, like, you know, like, have you ever been like with someone uncomfortable and you just feel like, oh, this is weird? You know, she felt that with his eyes, his hands, his posture. It all reminded her of the person that attacked her. And she was like, that's him. That has to be him. You know, I'm convinced that George Nasser was the Boston Strangler who tried to strangle me. You know? And Marcella Luca denied, because she had like remembered how he looked. Like, he was about 5'9", about 27 to 30 years old, honey baked hair. Not George Nasser. Albert DeSalvo did not look anything like the description that she gave. But George Nasser looked. She said there's a lot of similarities. The only difference was the color of the hair. She said that the guy's hair was a honey color, which is like a brownish, and George Nasser's hair was black. So I mean, if you look at this camera, my left side looks lighter than my right side because of the light. So I mean, obviously the light could change. The light could have made her see like a honey color or a dark color, you know, depending on how the lighting was. And I mean, there was this woman who investigated researched the trial, and for 6 years she researched this. After those 6 years she wrote a book with so much evidence proving that Albert is not the Boston Strangler. One of the evidence, and the biggest one, was they took DNA tests of DeSalvo and DNA tests of the sperm and all that found during the Mary Sullivan murder. None of it matched. Albert's DNA did not match with the semen, the blood, and all that around Mary. You know, fingerprints, all that. None of it matched. None of it. And that's a big thing. You know, if you went to somebody and you said, I murdered Mary Sullivan, and then there's evidence that you weren't even there, then it's obvious you lied. And like I said before, he's a compulsive liar, a pathological liar, a braggart, whatever. He just wants to be famous. You know, that's what I think. So, I mean, also a lot of people, including myself, I thought that Nasser was the Boston Strangler. And at the beginning, I really did think. But, I mean, Nasser was kind of normal. I mean, he lived a normal life in Providence, Rhode Island. He moved as a child from a different country with his family. and they worked in a mill. His father died at an appropriate age due to like an illness, I believe. But other than that, he was normal. He played sports, and he was in the Boy Scouts. The only thing was, the teacher said that he was reserved, quiet, and he didn't get along with other kids. I mean, that makes sense. That could be a reason why he killed people, you know? But I mean, his life wasn't like Albert's, where he was subjected to abuse and sex. He never got hit. His father never touched him. You know, he had a happy life. He had a sister. He had 2 sisters. Great family. But he just grew up he just went in the wrong path, and he just became a murderer. You know, he had no remorse for people. Like, he'd just shoot people. He'd beat them up. He stole cars. You know, I mean, that's not that bad when it comes to a serial killer. I mean, it's bad, but I mean, it's not. I can't see him raping 13 women and murdering them because with that type of background. What else am I going to say? What else was I about to say? I'm sorry. Also, other than being a psychopath and murdering people, George Nassar was a genius. He would boast about his IQ. His IQ score was 172. Now, I'm not good with IQ scores, but I'm pretty certain that that's a pretty good score, you know? And that makes people think, like, oh, if he's that smart, he could obviously do all of this and get away with it. And I believe that, too, at the beginning. You know, I believe that he used Albert, and he tempted him with the fame and the money to confess that he was the strangler when George was. That's what I thought. You know, because when they struck the deal, like, okay, if you confess, Albert, if you confess to these murders, I will help you get the money and the fame that you want so bad by writing the book and being I will be your advisor. That's what he said. He would fall everywhere George went. Albert was there. Everywhere Albert went, George was there. Albert, he would have George by his side, like, you know, they're like this. You know, they weren't like in a relationship or anything, but like they were just. When Albert would have family come to the prison to see him, George would be there, and the family would be like, "Why is he here? This is family," you know. And he'd be like, "Oh, he's my advisor. He's just seeing, you know, how it's going." But like, Albert wouldn't do anything without George's permission, you know. Albert is a pretty stupid person, okay? He's really stupid. Like, when he was running away from the cops, he stopped because a cop dropped his gun. He picked up the gun. I have a gun. Turned around. Gave the cop the gun. Idiot. You know, he's not smart. He's not bright. He's nice. He's polite and all that. You know, that's really nice to pick up my gun and give it to me. You know, now you're going to jail. You know, it's nice, but he's not smart. He can easily be manipulated. And with Nassar being a genius, I think that's what happened. You know? And Albert was going to tell people, like, towards the end of his life, he was like, I'm going to come, he told his psychiatrist, come to me, or whatever it was, therapist, please come here, I need to tell you the truth. And I think, this is what I thought George found out. Like, he heard through the grapevine that, oh, Albert's going to tell the truth. I'm screwed. And he killed him. Stabbed him. That's what I think he did. And I mean, in the end, Nassar died in prison, denying the fact that he was Boston Strangler. But, like I said in the beginning, I thought he was, until I learned about this man named Charles Edward Terry. Now, there's not a lot of information about Charles Edward Terry, but there's enough to make you believe that he was this Boston Strangler. This New York detective named I'm going to try to pronounce it. Kavanaugh, I'm going to say Kavanaugh, said that there is no doubt in my mind that if they pursued Terry, they would have had the man who killed the first 5 older women during the Boston Strangling. Terry had a history of rapes and assaults. He lived in Boston during the weekends of the first 5 murders. He headed to New York for some reason. I mean, you know, at first, I mean, what better place to kill people than a giant city? Expletive. But I'm sorry. Kavanaugh interrogated Terry in June 1963. A few days after a maid in Times Square Hotel found a woman named with the last name Clegg. Her real name was Zenovia Clegg, who was 62, and she was strangled in her hotel bed. The way that they found her, there was a scarf tied around her neck in a large bow, and her body had been positioned sexually, and a pair placed on the bed next to her right leg. Now, hearing that, it sounds a lot like the Boston Stranglers. I mean, the women were strangled and they bow tie, you know, and they were positioned in sexual ways, you know. And the pair reminds me of the Mary Sullivan with the card. I'm sorry if you hear this cat in the back. This cat's in heat. It won't shut up. I'm sorry. But like I said, they were sexually, and the pair remind me of Mary Sullivan with the card and the donut. I don't know what the deal was with the donut at the beginning. You know, it was just a random donut on the fire escape. I'm not saying it was Terry that did that. I'm not certain there was a donut there at all. But it kind of made me think, did it? Maybe he put that donut there to confuse people, and especially me, you know. But when Terry told Cobb that he killed Clegg, the woman, because she laughed at his impotence, and psychiatrists believe that Boston Strangler was an impotent man with tendencies. I mean, impotence kills the laughed at his impotence, and I think Strangler was an impotent man. I mean, it adds up together, right? And there was a lot of similarity, obviously, to the Clegg murder and Boston Stranglings. The bow tie, how the body was positioned, the age, and the way the room was ransacked, where it looked like there was a robbery but nothing was taken, all mirrored the crimes of the murderers. You know, it was all similar. And I mean, Terry's life was kind of bad, I guess. I mean, not Albert bad. Albert's life was horrible. But I mean, Terry grew up in Maine. He dropped out of the Marines at age 17. He spent time in the break for disciplinary problems, and he later went to jail for stealing a car. He said that he was repeatedly whipped by other inmates. And then once he got out, in April 1951, he assaulted 2 women. 21. He was 21. He assaulted 2 women on the same evening. He raped one of them. He was then put back in jail for 8 years. He was also suspected in several assaults. When he got out again, he got married. Then he got after an assault on a Maine woman in her 50s, broke her jaw, and was cutting her top open. That's pretty. Psychiatrists said him as an intelligent psychopath and a sexual deviant who enjoyed sadistic sexual acts. One of them said, Terry appears to be emotional, conflicted, unstable, and image-visual, unresolved sexual conflicts. You know, they discuss his involvement in a detached manner without apparent or guilt, feelings, or expressions of remorse. He admits inability to control reactions to real or imagined affronts, particularly while under the influence of intoxicants. In the end, Terry was convicted in New York strangling with Clegg, and he was sentenced in 1963 for when he died in jail in 1972. But that's
I think, obviously Albert and Joan, you know, obviously. I think Terry did the fuck. I think someone copied. Maybe it was Albert, maybe it was, but that's so. I think Terry most likely did. And also, Terry said he lived in. He said he lived in Boston. Right. Done. That's that he did it. A good evidence that. So, like I said, that's what I think. And, yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.